Saludos amigos de Breaking News Beer and Coffee. Aquí nuevamente un episodio más, un capítulo más. A este que le habla Jorge Ramos-Lugo, Jorge Ramos-Lugo. Aquí me acompaña Enrique Fernandez y Arturo Ferrer. Hoy tenemos un invitado, ¿qué te digo? De película. Una leyenda en el mundo de cervezas. El creador del estilo Double IPA. El creador de la emblemática cerveza Pliny The Elder. Vinnie Cilurzo. Welcome, Vinnie. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for us.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for being here, man.
Of course. I appreciate it. I don't know what you just said, but you're very enthusiastic.
Yeah.
We're pumped for a good beer.
Yeah. Well, who wouldn't be, right? For good beer and good coffee.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome, yeah.
So today we're going to be tasting the Pliny the Elder. It's
Emblematic.
The emblematic, the benchmark of the double IPA. So you created it in '94. So this is one of your babies, right?
It is. Yeah. We, I've been making that style of beer for some time now, and it started at this little brewery in Southern California that I had back in the mid '90s called Blind Pig. Mm-hmm. And that's still our conventional IPA, but that's where I made our my first double IPA, and was supposedly the first double IPA made in modern brewing times.
Wow.
No one's ever refuted that, so I'm going to take it as true.
Probably true.
Yeah. Now, did you get your hands on bottles of Blind Pig also, or just Pliny?
Yeah. Also,
we have
both.
Yeah.
Yeah, both.
We have one of each.
I also have my Pliny.
All right. Are we tasting both today?
We can taste both of them if you want to.
However you.
If you're up for it, I'm definitely up for it. I have one of each sitting next to me to taste with you, and was going to suggest, if we are going to taste both, that we start with the Blind Pig first, and then do the Elder.
Okay,
we can do
perfect
it.
for
Sounds
us.
Perfect.
Will be more than an hour for us. So let's start. Starting to.
Yeah, get them open. Let me go get my Blind Pig real quick.
Get your Blind Pig.
Be back in a second.
Yeah, no worries. Jorge, you and I can keep the show rolling.
Yes. So how is everything right now in Santa Rosa, Sonoma?
We're about I don't know, 50, 60 kilometers north of San Francisco, so we're pretty close, to the Bay Area.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole area was the first whole Bay Area, San Francisco up to Sonoma County, where we're at, was the first area in California to be locked down. So we've been locked down since I think maybe the second week of March. Luckily in America, we're deemed a business that's that's needed for day-to-day life. So we are able to keep brewing. Both our restaurants have shut down, and we're doing to-go food, which is allowed. But yeah, it's interesting because Normally we have 205 employees.
Wow.
With no restaurant really running. We had to furlough a lot of the bartender, servers, kitchen staff. So, we now have about 40 people running the brewery right now, which is normally about, like I said, 205 people. So that was the hardest part, was having to furlough, employees. And we still have, a small group working here, keeping the brewery running. We're selling a lot of beer through grocery stores right now, and that's been a huge saving grace for us. And the fact that we do have some grocery stores that we work with regularly, and they're selling probably 3-4 times as much beer as normal. So, and then it's legal in California to ship direct to consumers. So, it took us about 2 days to pivot and get the business realigned. But once Natalie and I put a plan in place, we've we've just put our heads down and have just run with it and executed it. And we're shipping beer every Monday. So that's what I've been doing all morning today. Being a Monday, was packing boxes and shipping it out with some of my team. And that's going to sustain us and keep us going. And, you know, we're not making as much money as we normally would, but at this point, I think the most important thing is just survival, you know, is just survive. And then, you know, and then all along, we're also making a plan for when we do reopen. Like we know that our 2 restaurants are going to have to be at 50% seating. So, you know, our one restaurant downtown seats 135 and the other seats 200. So they're going to be 50% of that, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So how do you see the beer industry right now in a short term, in a long term, because of the coronavirus? How do you see it?
You know, it's interesting because up until COVID hit, you were dead if you didn't have a tasting room, and that's where all the focus was in America, was tasting room. None of these breweries, these little breweries, wanted to distribute or anything like that. And the fact is if every small brewery wanted to distribute, there wouldn't be enough shelf space. And now suddenly the breweries that are distributing, and we're on the smaller side of a distributing brewery, but we do distribute, and that's been saving us. But suddenly, you know, bigger craft breweries that have been having trouble, you know, selling beer, like Boston Beer, New Belgium, Sierra Nevada, all these bigger breweries are just killing it now, even without any draft beer. Because keep in mind, none of us are selling much draft beer right now. But so there's some really small breweries that are hurting right now, but the bigger breweries are doing okay. Bigger craft breweries are doing okay. And then there's a lot of small to medium-sized breweries that have really strong followings, like us and some others that have really strong followings. Like, you know, Monkish in Southern California and Green Cheek in Southern California, and we were talking to our friends at Trillium a couple weeks ago, and all these breweries that have really strong followings are actually doing okay, and everyone has figured out ways to, you know, if they're shipping direct like we're doing, or they're out delivering to people's houses, just figuring out a way to survive. And I think it's going to be this way for a while, even once restaurants reopen, because I don't think people are going to go out as much as they once were until, you know, there's a vaccine for this.
Maybe some of the other states, they have to change the law of the shipping, because
I learned from California.
I think
that's right.
Because of the new corona is hurting the industry. I think that they have to change the law. You know, I don't know, to survival. They have to change it.
We're hoping that this will be the catalyst to help get some of the direct to consumer shipping laws changed. The thing here in the States is that direct to consumer shipping is a state by state thing. So it's not like you can go to the federal government and have them change the law. It has to be done on a state level. The wine industry did a really good job at that. There's an organization called Free the Grape, and they spearheaded this. And I think wineries can ship to probably 80% of the states direct, but a lot of them have a lot of paperwork that you have to do along with it. So that's not fun, but it is what it is.
So, I think you guys have had like one of the most loyal, if not the most loyal, following of fans in the beer industry in the US. So I'm guessing that's helping a lot right now.
It's really helping a lot. And Natalie and I are so grateful for all of the support from all of our guests and customers that have been coming to our brewery for all these years, that are, you know, on our social media lists and that are responding and ordering beer to help us, you know, get through this. And honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if we keep doing this, you know, maybe not during the summer when it's super warm, but on the other ends of those seasons, for sure to help us. And You know, just being quality driven, customer service driven, and just having the focus that we've had all of these years is really paying off. But you know, it's one last thing, and we can get into tasting the beers. Natalie and I have made this comment a couple times that we've had so much natural disaster here in Sonoma County that when COVID hit, like it's stressful, yeah, but it wasn't like we were frantic or we you know didn't you know what to do. You know, in 2017 there was the big Tubbs fire here where like 6,000 homes burned down in our community, and then you know that was in 2017, and then in 2019 the whole West County of Sonoma County flooded, and then later that year in November we had big fire, you know, here again that came within a mile of our Windsor production brewery. So I mean, we've just had one disaster after the other. So seems like those were like training for us for this.
Yeah, so we can relate it also about
we can relate it
because we here in Puerto Rico we have also Hurricane Maria. And then, in the beginning of January, we have an earthquake. So then we can relate it to you. So for us, it's getting hard because I have a daughter. It's difficult to her because she cannot go to the school. I'm schooling, you know, I have to do some homeschooling with her. So it's a little difficult. So
I understand. I understand. Well, shall we taste one of the beers?
The blind pig.
Start with the blind pig.
Blind pig then.
So the blind pig, the name is from my first brewery that I had down in Southern California I was involved with Blind Pig Brewery from 1994 to 1996. Blind pig is an old prohibition term from here in the States when prohibition was in effect from 1920 to 1933, and it basically was a slang term for a speakeasy. And there was a lot of different meanings to the term. Like you would maybe pay a nickel to go in and see a blind pig, and you happen to get a glass or a shot of something alcoholic. A pig was also known as a mason jar, and an unmarked mason jar was a blind pig, which is what they often served booze and liquor and beer out of. Let's see. There's many other stories, but those are the two that come to mind.
So
that's where the name.
It's a slang word for something that is illegal in that time, right? Related to alcohol.
Exactly.
Yeah,
yep.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. And so when I left the brewery in 1996, late 96, and that's when Natalie and I moved up to Sonoma County to help get Russian River Brewery started with the original owner at Corbel Champagne Cellar. My former business partner's friend came in and bought me out. So the brewery kept going until about 1999. And then it closed, and the trademark was just hanging out there. And in 2004, when Natalie and I took over Russian River Brewery from Corbel, my former employer who started the brewery, about maybe 6 months into that, maybe a year later, I noticed that the trademark for Blind Pig had lapsed. And so I saw it, I re-trademarked it, and that's how we came to have the name again. And so this is our standard everyday India Pale Ale. Quite honestly, it's when you compare it to a lot of the newer IPAs that are being made, it's not big or over the top. It's actually very subtle. There's a lot of finesse to it. But what it does have that a lot of the new age IPAs don't have is it still carries a really firm bitterness to the beer. And I would say the same thing about Pliny the Elder also, is that, all of our IPAs still carry a lot of bitterness to them. And that's not really the trend right now, at least here in America. Everything is for a juicy or hazy
Yep.
IPA, is to be really over the top hop flavors, but really soft on the bitterness. And for me personally, that's what a lot of hazy and juicy IPAs are missing, is just that crispness that bitterness adds, the bite. Yeah, which I really like it. I've been on this rampage lately that there's an assault on bitterness right now in beer. I'm here to put an end to it, or at least stick up for hop bitterness, because it does play a role in the drinkability of a beer.
Right. How much percent of alcohol have?
So Blind Pig is just 6 1/4, so 6.25%, and it's very much a small version of Pliny the Elder. It has a lot of the same hop varieties, but just in lesser volume. The main hops in it are Amarillo, Centennial, and Cascade, and Chinook. And so Amarillo is not so new anymore. It's been around for about 20 years. It's going to give more of a peach and apricot quality. But there's a lot more Cascade and Centennial in it. And there's also a little bit of Crystal in it. And the Centennial, the Cascade, and the Crystal, all of those are driving the citrus notes. So when you smell it and taste it, you're going to get orange and lemon. And it's a very citrus-driven beer, and that's an old-fashioned kind of IPA, if you will. But when I first wrote the recipe at Blind Pig in the mid-'90s, there was no such thing as Amarillo. There's a little bit of Centennial or a Simcoe in Blind Pig now. So since I first made the recipe back in the mid-'90s, I've added Amarillo and Simcoe to it, and more recently Crystal, to brighten up that citrus note. But yeah, I mean, back then there was no Simcoe, there was no Amarillo, let alone no Mosaic or Citra or Equinox, any of the New Age Eldorado, I could keep going, Galaxy. Nelson. I mean, all these hops that make it so easy to make an IPA now. Back then they didn't exist. What's really interesting is that back when I started homebrewing, I walked into the homebrew store and I saw this experimental hop. Back then, you never saw experimental hops. One was called CFJ4 and one was called CFJ90. And we now make a beer called CFJ90. In fact, we just finished canning it earlier today. And anyway, that was 1989. CFJ90, do you know what that hop became? That became Centennial.
Wow.
So when I started homebrewing, Centennial didn't even exist. It was an experimental. So then when I opened Blind Pig in 1994, Centennial was a part of my IPA recipe. But what wasn't in existence then was the hop Columbus, another hop that is so ubiquitous now. But I didn't add Columbus into the Blind Pig recipe until 1995 when it became available to me. So it was a much different time back then for hops.
That was one of the things I was going to ask, like how much the recipes have changed over time to what they are now. But clearly, it's.
I would say that the Blind Pig recipe is probably 70% the same. Maybe 80%. We've added in, like I said, some Simcoe, some Amarillo, a little bit of Crystal, but there's still Columbus in it. There's still Chinook in it. And I'm probably missing a variety in there, but yeah, I mean, the malt bill is still pretty much the same. I think more than anything else, I and my staff, we're just better brewers now, and we have a greater focus on quality. We have a greater focus, whether it's quality assurance or quality control, and making that our what we build our brewery on. That's the foundation of what Russian River sits on is quality. And you have a lot of breweries that of course talk about that, but we've invested heavily in our lab to make sure that we can quantify these things, and we do sensory every week and do all the things that make sure that we can track everything we do.
You guys are walking the walk.
We tried to.
I mean, they speak for themselves.
I once gave a presentation on how to build a lab, and I did it in stages. And I basically used us as a benchmark and as an example. And I kind of broke it down into beginner, intermediate, and advanced, equipment. And so we didn't start with anything fancy. We did it as we could afford it. And at the end, I made the comment like, you'll really have a great quality program when you dump a batch of beer. And like, will you really dump a batch of beer?
Yeah.
You say you'll dump a batch of beer. Everyone says they'll dump a batch of beer, but really, will you do it when push comes to shove and it's, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 worth of beer, whatever it is. And I remember a few months later, I was at a beer festival or something, and a brewer came up to me and he goes, "It was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but I dumped a batch of beer." And he was excited. He was excited in a sense of like, I see what you meant, because once you put bad beer in the market, that's your reputation.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
And one important thing is consistency. If you have the beer have to taste the same always. It's very difficult to do that.
Yeah, and that's something we've worked really hard at, and that's really hard with IPAs. I mean, we'll even taste Pliny from week to week, and because it's the beer we make the most of, and there'll be like subtle differences from week to week. Maybe not stuff maybe not flavor and aromas that are consumer can taste, but in nuances, some batches have a little more grapefruit and some have, a little more pine or whatever it is. And we're still trying to, work towards basically the consistency of what Sierra Nevada has. Means for me, Sierra Nevada is the benchmark that we want to work towards to be. And there's no one, in my opinion, in the beer industry that has better, quality control than they do. But, it goes beyond that. It's also how you treat your staff and those sort of things too.
That says a lot about Sierra Nevada, because I know you guys are always like super uber quality, and the freshness thing too. You guys try to drive it a lot. Always keep it cold, drink it fresh. The freshness part's really important for IPA. And, if there's one thing that I'm super proud of that I've contributed to the beer industry, it's the whole thing about IPAs and drinking it fresh. And we've really seen an increase in our shelf stability and flavor stability since we built our new production brewery, which is now a year and a half or so old. And there's something where nicer equipment does make better beer. And, I mean, we have we keep libraries of our beer, of everything we bottle. And I drink 3-month-old Blind Pig and Pliny, and it still tastes really good. Nice. Whereas 3-4 years ago, or 5-6 years ago, it'd been even worse. Our flavor stability was not that good. And so I'm really proud of all the effort and the equipment and the money we spent to buy really great equipment that makes even better beer and higher quality beer. Is there one thing specifically, talking about IPAs, because we're having some today, but is there one brewing step in the brewing process that you would say plays the most important role? Is it water chemistry, pH, or oxygen, or what?
Yeah, I'd say obviously everything you just mentioned is really important. And, obviously pH and mash is critical in the mash. And, the malt bill, it often gets overlooked, but not too much. If any crystal malt in the recipe, keep that super low. Or don't add it at all, and let the hops really blast through. But I would say that, oxygen in your brewing process, and, even as a home brewer, if I was starting out home brewing now, if I knew then what I know now, I would have bought a CO2, a carbon dioxide bottle, to purge my bottles you know, even before I started kegging, just so that we could rid the bottles of oxygen. And so, you know, we talk about oxygen and parts per billion. And, you know, here we're in the middle of wine country in, you know, Northern California, and winemakers always are like just amazed that we're talking parts per billion and not million. And, you know, we're aiming for 20 parts per billion total package oxygen in the bottle or less. That's our standard. Anything more than 20 and we're out of spec. If we go over 30, we'll go back to that fill head, grab a bottle again, run it through our tester that tests total package oxygen. And if it's still high, we'll shut the whole line down and figure out what's going on. Or we actually bought a bottling line for our new brewery here. It's an Italian brand filler called Guy, and we can actually tell the machine to not fill a certain head. So let's say fill head number 10 is giving us a low fill, or we keep pulling a sample from it and it's got high total package oxygen, we can just shut it off and not use it and then fix it later. So oxygen at the end of the day is the most important thing. You keep your oxygen levels low through the process and the packaging, whether it's bottles, cans, or kegs, and you store your beer cold and you ship it cold and have the retailer sell it cold. You've done everything you can to get the beer to the consumer, and then hopefully they store it cold, you know, at their house and consume it quick. You know, I think the bottles are about a month old that you're drinking right now. Is that correct?
I think it was 415. April.
Almost a month.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I'm drinking one, a blind pig that was bottled the following week. So mine is April 22nd. I think you said yours was like the
April 15th.
15th. Yeah.
Yep.
So it's about the same time frame. And yeah.
So we're drinking the same beer, maybe have the same flavor.
Yeah, it would within a week.
Doesn't change anything right now.
It wouldn't be that far off. Yeah. Now, if this was 10 years ago, I would be singing a different song now, because our bottling line at our old production
one week later
of our original bottling line at our old production brewery was a heap of crap. That was it did not do our beer justice. And we were very fortunate. Natalie and I were at a craft brewers conference in Boston, and we went by the booth for an American company called Prospero, who represents Guy, the Italian bottling company. And Danny Prospero said, "Hey, we're neighbors. I'm looking for someone to kind of be my showpiece brewery in California. I have a shop in New York with one. How would you like to be my showpiece, kind of lighthouse to show off?" And he gave us a very good deal on a brand new Guy filler, and that changed our beer forever. And then when it came time to build our new production brewery, which I hope you guys come visit someday, we bought another Guy filler, just bigger and a little nicer, and we took that old filler and moved it into our funky brewery, and where we bottle all of our sour beer.
Nice.
So we have a really nice filler even for just our sour beer also, but we've just kept upgrading, and we do can some beer right now. We use a mobile canner right now, but we plan to buy a little Guy can filler as well, that we'll receive later this year or first of next year.
How many barrels you are making per year right now?
We're last year we did about let's see, I think it was about 35,000 barrels. So we're a pretty good size brewery. I mean, we're a mid-sized brewery, and about 4,000 of that is at our little brewery in Santa Rosa, and then 31,000 was at our big production brewery. Before COVID, we were thinking we were going to do about 40,000 barrels this year, but that we won't be that much. But I think we'll still be able to brew 35,000 barrels this year. Again, we're very fortunate that we've been able to ship a fair amount of beer through all this. And like Enrique said, we have a very good following, and we've been very fortunate to have the support from our customers like that. You know, it's we didn't, you know, we've never been about just growth. It's always been more about, you know, quality and being in the right places, selling beer in the right stores, and stores that take care of our beer, pay their bills,
take care of their products,
treat our drivers good, because we deliver our own beer all over the Bay Area. We have about 16 or 17 routes a week that we run, and that's really you know, how we formulated our business, is just finding the right places that treat our beer good, that are into quality beer.
Freshness.
Do you see on the near future, do you see the Blind Pig or the Pliny in a can?
You know, we obviously thought long and hard about it, because I mean, imagine, and I'm just going to use us as an example because I lived it, but every brewery in the world went down this road. COVID hits, you're told by your government you have to, you know, shut down your restaurant. You know, I mean, geez, I saw something that Modelo had to shut their whole brewery down in Mexico, which is just crazy to me to think that, you know. And you have tanks full of beer, and it's like, what the hell are you going to do with all this beer?
Of course.
And I was like, we're going to be dumping like thousands of barrels of beer, or at least hundreds of barrels of beer. And thankfully it didn't happen. And so, anyways, so now we're, you know, we just want to be at par from last year if we can. And we certainly thought about, you know, potentially kegging or canning Blind Pig and Pliny, but in the end we decided not to, and we just started canning a bunch of other one-off beers, and you know, beers that had never been canned before. I quickly made labels for them and got them into cans, and so so that was how we did it. I will say that we do have a special version of Pliny that maybe will be coming out within a couple weeks in a can, but we haven't officially announced it yet. I'll leave it just a little tease.
Yeah.
Heard it here first.
We want that can of beer.
Whoever got you these bottles will have to get you some of this special.
We're gonna have to see what we can get.
Did someone ship it to you, or did someone travel down?
Right. No, we got them shipped. Yeah,
that's
cool. It was a little bit of a contraband, but nothing raises morale. Nothing raises morale.
Absolutely.
Like a Russian river beer when you're stuck at home.
Thanks.
So going back a little bit, like you talked about the Blind Pig brewery, that basically your first brewery. How did you get to basically invent the double IPA style? Were you always a big fan of hops, or what drove you to?
Yeah, when I was a home brewer, that's all I brewed was IPA, and I knew from the first time I homebrewed that I was going to open a brewery and do that for the rest of my life.
Nice.
So that's where the recipe came from originally, but yeah, I mean, it's kind of just something that I fell in love with, and so when I went to open Blind Pig, I had the homebrew recipe. I didn't know how to extrapolate it up, so I went to our friends at Pizza Port, and Vince Marsaglia, the brother of the sister and brother team that owned Pizza Port, then they just had one spot in Solana Beach, San Diego County, and so he helped me, extrapolate my recipe up. But then I wanted to test our equipment, with a bigger beer. So that's what I did. I took my IPA recipe and I doubled the hops and raised the alcohol a little bit, and basically created the double IPA recipe to test the equipment. And then the next year, that was the inaugural beer, and it was called Inaugural Ale. And then the next year for our anniversary, we made an anniversary beer. And then when the second anniversary, we did it. So I made a double IPA just 3 times at Blind Pig. But keep in mind, the Blind Pig recipe back then, it was 6.25% alcohol, but it was 92 BUs, bittering units. So like what you're drinking right now is about 68 BUs.
Wow.
So it was ultra bitter, but it wasn't as dry as it is now.
Ridiculous too.
And so, I mean, our regular IPA was more bitter than most double IPAs now. But anyways, that's where it came from. And even after we closed, after I left Blind Pig and it kept going, I remember Greg Cook from Stone reached out to me and said, hey, since you've left Blind Pig, and even I know it's still going, but they probably won't make a double IPA again, would you mind if we brewed one for I think it was their second or third anniversary. I think it was their second anniversary, because I think Stone's first anniversary, they made Stone IPA. And then for their second anniversary, they made a double IPA, and they gave me a little shout out on the label, which was really cool. Nice. And then I started brewing Pliny in 1999 at Russian River Brewery. Wow. And so that was a whole new recipe, and it had and still does have a real focus on the Simcoe hop.
Which one is your favorite hop, or your which one is your favorite hop?
I would say for IPA, it's Simcoe. And, it means a lot to me because I helped, kind of put it on the map, if you will, or at least the beer did. There's a really cool story about the development of Pliny the Elder and Simcoe. And if you were to have like Mike Smith or Brad Carpenter or Jason Peralt, which are the 3 farms that own the Simcoe rootstock, if you had them on, they would tell you the same story, that the trajectory of Simcoe is on the same trajectory as Pliny the Elder. So as Pliny became popular, the Simcoe hop became popular because other brewers discovered Pliny and they were drinking it and they were going, wow, this is crazy. Like, I mean, it's very flattering and humbling to me to hear that story. I've heard it hundreds of times from other breweries, and it, obviously it doesn't get old, but it's very humbling. And then one day, some of these farmers told me that Simcoe pretty much saved their farms. Like it still gives me chills when I hear that these hop farms, were, close to going under, and they bred Simcoe, and what's interesting is when they first came out with Simcoe, no one used it. We were using it. A handful of other breweries in the U.S. were using it. But it got to the point where there was 1 acre of Simcoe in the ground. And that was about 2004. And that's when Natalie and I took over Russian River Brewery from Corbel. We opened our brew pub in Santa Rosa. And then from 2004 to 2010, that's when Pliny started getting popular, and then Simcoe at the same time. Yeah. And then in 2010, and we're using it in Pliny the Younger also. And in 2010, that's when Pliny the Younger went crazy, and it became super popular and has a lot of Simcoe in it also, and still does.
What difference between Pliny the Elder and Pliny the Younger?
Same malt bill, but just with more base malt and more sugar in the Younger to make it 10.25% alcohol. Wow. In the early days, it was the exact same hop bill, just more of those hops. Since then, we've really changed the Younger recipe on the hop side. It still has, the focus is still on Simcoe and Amarillo, but it has a lot of other varieties in it now. It has Mosaic, It has a fair amount of Citra. It has a little bit of Nelson in it.
Wow.
It has a lot of crystal in it. So but like the Citra, the Nelson, the Mosaic, well, the Citra, there's a pretty good amount in there, but the Nelson and the Mosaic, it's just small amounts to just like lift some of the other hop qualities in the beer.
I wouldn't have thought it had such a large amount of different hops. That's
yeah,
interesting.
In modern hops too.
Yeah, I did. You know, I mean, there was a time, and I was quite famously, I made the comment publicly that I didn't like Citra. I mean, I honestly think though there's more Citra in the ground, and it's more mature. But for years, Citra just tasted like cat pee to me. It smelled like cat pee, a lot like Nelson does. Like if you use too much Nelson, it tastes like, you know, a cat pissed on, you know, your carpet in your house and you came in 12 hours later. And Citra had that same quality to it. But I will say that over the years, I would rub Citra every time I went to Yakima. And when Natalie and I go up and do hop selection every year in Yakima, Washington, we stay on a farm and they're usually harvesting Citra. And so Citra and Mosaic are at about the same harvest window. So anyways, I've rubbed a lot of Citra over the years, and I finally figured out what I liked about Citra, like what picking window I liked and what picking window I didn't like. And the same goes for any hop, you know, like Simcoe is really interesting. Simcoe has about a 10 or 12 day picking window. If you select Simcoe that's within the early, like the first third of the 10, 12 day picking window, it's very grapefruit driven. If you get it in the middle of that picking window, it's more pine. And if you get it at the end, it's more pungent. And we typically like it somewhere between like on picking window between like day 4 and 6. We want a little bit of grapefruit but a little more pine.
A little pine.
Yeah.
Vinnie, how about the name Pliny? How did you get that?
Yeah, and I poured myself some Pliny just now. So
we should open it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Finish your blind pig.
I really don't need blind pig. So
how did you come with the name Pliny the Elder?
So when in 1999 when we first brewed it, there was one of our accounts in near Oakland, California, in a town called Hayward. It's called the Bistro, and Vic and Cynthia, the owners, were putting on a double IPA festival, and they knew that I'd made a double IPA blind pig, and so we. I came up with a recipe and brewed the beer, and Natalie and I said, we need to come up with a name. We wanted a name that was almost larger than life, that would be almost bigger than the beer itself. So we were first thinking of things like Mammoth. Obviously, there's a Mammoth brewery, so that wasn't going to work. But words that describe big. And we just couldn't come up with anything. And then we were thinking of like gods, like Nebuchadnezzar or something. So we had this brewing dictionary, and it referenced hops. Obviously, there was a hop line, and then hops referenced Humulus lupulus, which is the botanical name for hops, still is. And then that referenced Lupus salicarius, which was the original botanical name, which was supposedly coined by Pliny the Elder. Pliny is how originally, and his contemporaries. And so Pliny and his contemporaries wrote about hops and talked about Lupus salicarius, and they described it as a wild vine, and it grew wild in the forest like a wolf would be among scrubs. And that's exactly they wrote about it. And so that's where the name came from. And then once we started brewing it, we then learned about his adopted son and nephew, Pliny the Younger. And that's how we then came up with Pliny the Younger and started brewing that in 2005. And it just stuck. I mean, to some degree, we're in the right place at the right time. Also, earlier, you have to have quality. Like someone may buy a product, whether it's beer, wine, whatever, chocolate, and it might have a really great label or great name. Yeah. But no one's going to come back to it if what's inside the bottle or package isn't any good.
Yeah, of course.
100%.
No, this is the aroma is beautiful.
This is
it's
ridiculous.
Really fresh.
So in brewing, we talk in dry hopping, which is, when we add the hops to the beer done fermenting. Back when I had Blind Pig, 1 pound of dry hops per barrel of beer, so per 31 gallons of beer, was a lot. Like we were revolutionary then to be doing a pound per barrel dry hop, and our double IPA back then was 2 pounds per barrel, which was unheard of. So the Blind Pig that you just had is about 1 pound per barrel, and the Pliny that you're drinking now is just over 2 pounds per barrel. I think it's like 2.1 pounds. So even compared to like a lot of the big hazy and juicy IPA brewers, I mean, there's brewers that are at like 3-4 pounds per barrel is normal. And we make some beers now that are 3.5 pounds per barrel. I mean, I'm hearing breweries that have done 6 and 8 pounds per barrel dry hop, which is just crazy. But so this still like showcases what you can do on a, I don't want to say a small amount, but compared to, but light, compared to what some of our friends are doing now in the industry. And so
I think that it's the time when they use the hops, because maybe they use that large quantities and the dry hop, and doesn't have any bitter in. It's like maybe a sweet beer with a lot of aroma, but maybe it's the scheduling of the hops.
Yeah, and we've always had big whirlpool charges of hops, and decent sized dry hops as well. But I've also always believed in not just bittering additions at the beginning of the boil, which for Pliny the Elder is a hop called Warrior. That's another hop that Jason Peralt bred. Jason is the one that bred Simcoe. He also bred Mosaic. He bred Citra, among others. So he's like, I call him the Michael Jordan of hop breeding.
The Godfather of hops.
No matter what he does next, I don't think he can outdo Simcoe, Mosaic, Citra. He does have this beautiful new hop 692 that doesn't have a name yet. That's got the most beautiful pink grapefruit quality to it.
Wow.
That we've sponsored, and that will, I'm sure, it'll get released and get a name. But yeah, so we make middle boil hop additions also, which for Pliny is Simcoe and Amarillo, and that adds mouthfeel and texture of hops to the body of the beer and the mouthfeel of the beer. Whereas the conventional thinking now for a hazy or juicy beer, and don't get me wrong, I use this practice for some of our newer IPAs, where we just put a tiny bit of bittering hops in, and then we backload it all on the whirlpool, and you do get this very unctuous aroma, and of course we dry hop a lot too, but it's missing, those beers miss that mid palate that I think Pliny has, and it's 8% alcohol, and it's like alcohol, it's forgotten that alcohol adds body and mouthfeel to a beer.
What hops in the Pliny?
So it's Warrior. There's Centennial, some Cascades in it, Amarillo, Simcoe, and there's a little. To bring up the citrus notes in it, we now add a tiny bit of Citra and a tiny bit of Crystal to it. But the main hop in Pliny is still Simcoe. Okay. And so when I describe Simcoe hop, as I said earlier, it's grapefruit, it's pine, it can be pungent. And so the overall quality of the hop flavor in Pliny are those flavors. It's grapefruit, it's pine, a lot of pine quality in it. Another descriptor of the Simcoe hop, but most, at least here in the States, most Americans don't know what this fruit tastes like. What would be the lychee? Lychee nut? Yeah. And you know, you can get it in some Hispanic or Asian markets, but like I've never seen it in a conventional supermarket here in the States. So sometimes we'll get that lychee fruitiness, which is almost like overripe fruit, but in a nice way. And and then and the one hop that I missed is the Columbus. I mentioned it earlier. You know, that goes by the acronym CTZ, Columbus, Tomahawk, Zeus, because they're all the same 3 hop varieties. Right. And we use a little bit of CTZ in Pliny and the dry hop, just to get a little bit of a dank quality to it. I believe what's the date on the Pliny you're drinking?
This is 416, so a day younger than the blind
so it's just bottled the day before, after, whatever it is. And so you probably won't see any of that dank quality that comes from the CTZ, because that tends to taper off after about 2 weeks. It contributes something in the background as it ages out, but when we taste it really young, to be honest with you, like if you were, I'm drinking, and I just grabbed a bottle of Pliny out of our gift shop that was bottled a week ago. And so it still has just a little bit of that pungent note to it. But that will eventually, I said, it goes away and just becomes a background note, not too forward. Right off the bottling line, Pliny is almost too pungent, and it needs about a week to settle in. And that's when I know that Pliny tastes right, is when I pull a bottle off the line and I taste it. It has a little bit of an onion garlic pungent note to it, but I know that it's gonna taper off.
It's gonna drop.
I love that. I was lucky enough to visit the brew pub, Santa Rosa, like maybe 2014. Not sure which year it was, but one of my favorite beers was Road 2 Hill 56.
Yeah, we canned that today also. That's an all Simcoe
That was like,
beer.
and I believe it's single hop. It's just Simcoe, right?
Yeah, it's just Simcoe, and the name is an homage and a tribute to the Simcoe hop and its original location. So when they breed hops, it starts out in what they call the single hill farm or lot, meaning that there's literally only one vine of that specific hop, and so it doesn't even get a number yet, let alone a name. And so that's how they call it out, is by the row and the hill number. So the original location in the single hill farm at Peralt Farms for Simcoe was the second row over and the 56th hill in. So row 2, hill 56 is called that. And I was on a trip to Yakima many years ago, and I had gone to all 3 farms that own Simcoe, Carpenter, Loftus, and Peralt, all in one day. And 2 of the 3 farms mentioned row 2, hill 56. And I said, I think this is a sign. I have to make all Simcoe beer. And when you look at the logo of it, or you can go to our website, it's like a post with the 3 farms' names pointing, different directions as a tip of the hat to those farms for breeding this hop. So
the Pliny is like was best beer of the year by 7 years straight, right?
Yeah, by Zymergy, and then we got knocked off by our friends at Bell's with 200. So we're number 2 for the last 2 or 3 years, but that's okay. Yeah. We had a great run, and we love Two Hearted, and the crew at Bell's are dear friends of ours. And so, in fact, we usually send each other a case. We send them a case of wine, and they send us a case of Two Hearted each year. And you know, what really surprises me about that is that I think Two Hearted's now won 3 years in a row. Pliny had won 7 years in a row. But for that whole 7 years, Two Hearted was number 2. Yeah. The last 3 years, Pliny has been number 2. And so that means that in 10 years, you're
going to switch again.
Well, those are really old brands, and I see other beers working their way up, and hazy beers and this and that. But I'm really flattered that the homebrewers still pick us and keep us. I mean, I'm just happy to be in top 5 or 10, let alone
no hard
be on the
feelings
list.
with Bell's.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It's crazy though, because you guys, if you compare the brewing capacity, I think Bell's is what, like 500,000 barrels a year.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
a very big.
It's crazy.
Yeah, it's a very big.
So
Yeah, they're
compared to what
probably-
you guys are doing now, it's still like, it's amazing that you got 7 years in a row.
Well, you know, and also when you look at the hop bills of these beers, you know, I mean, Centennial is that's, you know, Two Hearted's an all Centennial beer, and you know, that's not the most big, robust hop. And the majority of the hops in Pliny, you know, in their day, Simcoe was off the chart. But compared to, you know, Citra and Mosaic and Nelson and Galaxy, you know, I mean, Simcoe's downright pedestrian compared to to those hops. You know what I mean? And you know what most people don't know is that Mosaic, you know, which is like one of the most popular hops after Citra now, is Simcoe's daughter. So Simcoe and Mosaic are related.
Oh,
So,
nice.
and that's really cool. Like, yeah, that you know, part of what gives Mosaic what it has is its pedigree of Simcoe.
Mosaic have this it's like a dank. It have a dank odor, you know. It's like a maybe
It's
sniffing
very peculiar.
maybe sniffing like a joint. Because
So you,
yeah.
so you
Yeah.
are getting a little bit of pungent dank then.
Yeah.
Oh
they're
yeah, I'm
yeah.
still getting it from
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Because and that's what I was saying earlier is that when this beer is young, like right off the bottling line, it literally does smell like a big old flood, you know. But as it ages out, and that's, to be honest with you, you know, we were talking earlier about consistency. That to me is one of the hardest things for this beer, is that, you know, I like a little bit of this pungentness, but I also want the pine, the lychee, the grapefruit. I want all these other things. So how do you, and the onion garlic, you know, thiol is such a volatile aromatic compound that it's tough to keep in the aroma in the beer. And so, you know, finding ways to keep that consistent is quite honestly really hard, but it's something we strive towards.
Do you guys?
Hey, I have a question. Okay.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No,
I was gonna say, do you guys filter Pliny?
We only
it looks beautiful. It's
we centrifuge the beer, but no filters though, like no actual physical filter. You know, that's up to debate whether you would consider a centrifuge a filter or not. But you know, a centrifuge, as you may know, spins the beer at about 8,000 RPMs, revolutions per minute. It sounds like the worst thing you can do to a product, but it's actually one of the most gentle ways to remove yeast and sediment from beer, because you're not pushing the beer through a filter itself, you know, like a filter pad, or like some breweries use diatomaceous earth. And they run it through a filter that way. But diatomaceous earth is high in iron, which is iron's an oxidizer. So we don't want any diatomaceous earth in our brewery. So a centrifuge is actually a really nice way to remove, you know, sediment and whatnot. Interestingly, even all of our hazy beers we make, those are all spun through a centrifuge, either at our big production brewery or our little brew pub in Santa Rosa. And we still keep a haze because the haze is from the protein, not from the yeast itself. But Pliny has always been a pretty clean beer.
Yeah, clear beer.
If you look at the bottom of the bottle, there might be a little dustiness sediment down there, but it's not much.
It's not that much.
Yeah.
Talking about haziness, what do you think of the new revolution of the IPAs? The new haze grade. Do you think that is a fad or something that is gonna be forever, or is this like I don't know, maybe a new kind of IPA, like the Pliny the Elder or the Blind Pig that you may create? Is something that is gonna stuck with us, or is it something that is gonna fade away?
I personally think hazy IPA is here to stay. I don't think it's going anywhere. But I take your question and look at it on a more broad level, in that I think that the question or the statement comment is more, IPAs are here to stay.
Yeah.
And I come from the wine industry, and we're in the middle of wine country. So I compare a lot of, and make a lot of parallels between beer and wine. And so, like, I think of IPA as Chardonnay, and in that it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's the most popular wine style in America. But yet you can have a stainless steel fermented Chardonnay with no oak. You could have a stainless steel fermented Chardonnay that's then aged in oak. You could have a barrel fermented Chardonnay. It could be French oak. It could be American oak. It could be Hungarian oak. It could be whatever. Then you could say it could be malactic. I'm just throwing examples out. And then you can take any one of those combinations. Now they have concrete has come back. I have winemaker friends that are aging and fermenting in concrete to get the minerality and the shape of the egg, as you were just noting. And so, like, that to me is where IPA is like, I don't think IPA is going anywhere for a long time.
I think the IPA is the most sellable. This is the most people that join the craft beer like IPAs. The most important for me. It's the most important variety of beer. I don't know. The style is very, very capable of everything. You have black IPAs.
Yeah.
You have the hazy IPA, the West Coast IPA, the hazy IPA, everything IPA.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've seen white IPAs. I've seen red IPAs. Blah blah blah. Yeah. I mean, and I think, like, what you're gonna see is, like, black IPA came and went. Like that.
Yeah.
That had a very small window. White IPA came and went. That was basically like a cross between a Belgian white beer and an IPA. But hazy IPA is stuck, and I don't, I never had any, like, there's a lot of brewers in America that still won't make a hazy IPA, and I never really had that mindset that said, I'd never stubbed my nose at it. Because I remember when I made double IPA to start, that was me. Like, I was in the shoes of the hazy IPA brewer. I was John at the Alchemist back in the mid '90s. And so, I was the Sean Hill back doing double IPA. I mean, I always think of, like, Hill Farmstead, obviously the Alchemist, as being some of the early adopters of it.
Shout out to Heady Topper. It's an excellent beer too.
So I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, I remember being chastised and beat up by not that there was that many breweries at the time, but I remember being at festivals and hearing, other brewers say under their breath, "Oh, that blind pig," they're just flavor, and and so I totally get where they're coming from, and it takes a revolutionary brewer to make a bold beer like Heady Topper or like Pliny, or even like Two Hearted. Like, one of the reasons why you would want to use more hop varieties in a beer is so that if one of your hops is maybe not a great selection for that season, it's not, you're not 100% banked on that hop. But when you make a beer that's 100% one hop, like, it's all or nothing. Like, if there's a bad centennial year, Bell still has to figure out how to make Two Hearted. You know what I mean? So that, those are, there's many more beers, Allagash White, it's not an IPA, but that to me is a revolutionary beer too. Someone like Rob Todd that, that was making a beer style back when no one cared about Belgian beers. And you can go farther back to Sierra Nevada Pale Ale, which is a beer that I still always have in my fridge and I still love. And
Yeah,
Liberty,
it's a classic one.
Liberty Ale from
Like,
Anchor.
yeah.
Benchmarks. That's benchmarks.
Benchmarks.
Yeah, benchmarks.
It's like Pliny and Blind Pig. It's benchmarks. You know.
Yep.
It's. I think it's the same category of the Sierra Nevada Pale Ale. You know. It's the same. It's the same. It's the same.
Yeah, and I always try to talk about Sierra Nevada specifically because, you know, yes, it's respected amongst brewers, but I think there's a lot of you know, brewers and consumers that look at a beer like that and say, oh, well, it's, you know, it's kind of pedestrian now. It's you know, compared to all the flavors that you get out of the IPAs and stuff these days. But the fact is like it's still full of flavor and it's a beautiful, great beer. You know, yeah. So, anyways.
So along those lines, if you had to pick a beer to drink for the rest of your life, what would you say was your?
Whoa.
You know, if it's, I'm gonna assume you mean a non-Russian River beer.
I mean, anything goes. Whatever.
Both. You can choose
I usually throw. This is usually pretty easy. If Natalie was here right now, she could answer this for me. If you asked Natalie, if you called her right now and said, what beer would be his desert island beer, it would be Orval.
Oh,
wow.
Wow.
Yeah, the Brett finished beer. We make a lot of Brett finished beers now, so I don't drink near as much Orval as I once did. But I love Brett finished beers because they're continuously changing. Yeah. And so you know, you're stuck on a desert with one beer. The beautiful thing about a beer like Orval or other Brett finished beers is, you know, we're talking about no bacteria, just Brettanomyces added at bottling, is that the Brettanomyces creates all these unique flavors and it's continually changing over time. And, you know, I was lucky enough to once be at Orval and taste Orval from like 1 month to, I don't know, few years old, whatever it was. I can't remember. It was like 12 or 15 different iterations of it, just different ages. And it's such a different beer and it continually changes. So, you know, if you only have one beer, at least you have something that can keep changing.
Keep it interesting. That's nice. Awesome. I wasn't expecting that.
No, me either.
That's great.
I'm from Russian River. Which one?
Probably, gosh, I probably our Pilsner, STS Pils. I really like our Pilsner. It's a Keller style Pils. Which means it's unfiltered. It's dry hopped a little bit, so it's not super traditional, but it still has a lot of classic flavors. Has really nice, you know, German hop and French hop notes and German malt and lager yeast. And I'm a closet lager fan.
Yeah. I'm also a lager fan.
Yeah,
that was awesome beer.
We have another lager called Velvet Glow. That's a Helles, a German style Helles that I really love. That we've just really honed that recipe in, and lagers are making a comeback here in this state, but they're still not. You know, IPAs own the market.
Yep.
We love IPAs. We love lagers too.
Yeah.
If you have a hoppy lager, much better.
That's what STS is. It's a hoppy lager. You know, it's 40 BUs, so it's got a firm bitterness. We dry hop, and it's using Aramis, which is a French hop that was bred from Strisselswald.
Yeah, Aramis, yeah.
And then it's got a little bit of Hallertau middle through in it and some tradition. Whereas Velvet Glow, where STS is kind of it's a hoppy Pilsner. It's my own kind of vision of how I like a Pilsner. But Velvet Glow, I made very classically Helles and very traditional. And all the trips we made to Germany while we were building our brewery, really, I drank a lot of Helles. Velvet Glow.
So did you like to make, maybe in another time, Pilsner or something like a Helles with American variety hops?
You know, I mean, never say never. Every entrepreneur has a list of things they say they would never do. And I think I've broken every one of them. Make an easy IPA. We opened a second restaurant, things I say we would never do. But right now, no. I love the classic German hop varieties: Hallertau, Mittelfrüh, Tradition, Hirschbrucker, Tettnang. Yeah, we use Tettnang in Velvet Glow. We buy hops direct from a co-op in Germany, and then they ship them direct to us. You know, and he's always, you know, shipping me a box of this new variety or that new variety. And they're nice, but they just don't interest me. I like what they call the old landrace varieties.
Yeah. So the pilsners of Roche and Weir have always the German hops.
Well, it started out to be all French hop, Aramis, but yeah, we've just so that we weren't so pigeonholed into one hop, just in case there was a bad hop year in France, I've added in some Mittelfrüh and Tradition.
Okay.
So yeah. So
hey,
listen, I've got about 2 minutes, and then I need to go. I actually.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. I really enjoyed chatting with you guys. This was fun.
Thank you very much for.
It's an honor, man. Really, thank you for
the
time and. Way more time than we would have thought. So really, like, thank you for making awesome beers, and thank you for accepting the invite.
No problem at all. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and if you come across our beers again, let me know. I'd be happy to jump on again.
Thank you.
That's great, man.
Cheers from Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
I will stop, and then we take a photo, right? So, hasta la próxima, amigos. Aquí esto es todo por hoy en Breaking News, Beer and Coffee. Hasta la próxima.
Gracias, Vinnie.
Gracias, Vinnie. Un honor.
Thank you, man.
Cheers.